This podcast is brought to you by On Track Studio.
This podcast addresses various mental health challenges, including topics such as suicide, addiction, eating disorders, depression, and anxiety. These discussions may be triggering for some individuals. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek support from a mental health professional or a trusted individual in your life. Remember, you are not alone, and help is available. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Mind Your Head. This week, joining me in the studio is Tess Keightley, or better known as Authentic Spoon. Tess is a passionate dietitian and nutritionist who is passionate about helping individuals achieve their health goals through proper nutrition and also building healthier relationships with their food. Tess will share valuable tips and insights on how to make healthier choices, create personalised meal plans, and also maintain a sustainable approach to eating. So sit back, relax, put the kettle on, make yourself a cup of tea, run yourself a bath, do whatever it is that you like to do when listening to Mind Your Head. Maybe get yourself a notepad because this episode is going to be packed with valuable information and practical advice. Let's get it. Tess, welcome to Mind Your Head. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. We have a lot to get through today, but I've seen and read a lot of your content and the way that you approach your work. But firstly, congrats on being a new mum to a baby girl called Andy. I really love that name.
Thank you.
So what's been the whole experience like for you?
Oh, it is so beautifully amazing. Like anyone who's on the fence about having kids, 100% do it. It is the most amazing thing you'll ever do. Like the love that I have for her is like I cannot explain it. Yeah. I actually remember when I was pregnant, my partner Zach, I said to him, I was like, just being sarcastic, I was like, do you think you're going to love this baby more than you love me? And he was like, yeah. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I can't imagine loving anyone more than I love Zach. Then when your baby comes into this world, like he's in the corner now. Like this little baby is my whole world. Yeah. So it's amazing. It's hard. Like I think, got to have real expectations of what motherhood looks like. But it's like the hardest thing you'll ever love. My friend Nicole says that and I was like, that is the best quote ever. Yeah. So
I often get told it's the hardest yet most rewarding thing you'll ever do. What's been the most rewarding part of it so far?
Even just the little things, like when she wakes up in the morning, just like she wakes up and she'll like push up and just start smiling. Like just imagine waking up, looking at your parents smiling. I'm like, it's the little things like that, honestly. It's hard, but it's like choose your heart, I always say. Like what could be harder is really wanting to have a baby and not being able to fall pregnant. So
exactly.
I think for me it's hard, but it's like it's so worth it. Like, yeah.
How's it been sort of balancing your responsibilities as a mother and also with your sort of professional goals as well?
Okay, this is the hardest thing for me. So I own my business and I don't get obviously the support like maternity leave or anything like that. Being a business owner, you have to be working on the business, in the business for the business to do well. So that's been the hardest thing for me, juggling both of them, I think. But I said to myself I wanted to just work one day a week till she was 6 months. So she's actually 6 months tomorrow. Start working one day a week when she was 6 months. So I've still kind of just been posting like little bits of content on social media, which is work for me, but it's not work that I find work. It's just me sharing my healthy lifestyle anyway. So I work in a hospital one day a week. I consult to the private hospital. And the first day that I went back, I cried at least 6 times, I reckon. The guilt that you have leaving your baby. Then just obviously baby brain. Like it is a real thing. Anyone who's listening to this podcast who has a baby, I'm currently in the baby brain fog. So if I stumble in this episode.
So what does it look like?
It happens to me a lot in the supermarket. So I'll be pushing the trolley, adding things to the basket. Then I'll get home and be like, can't remember what I just did. It's just like this fogginess that hangs over you, the sleep deprivation. I'm exclusively breastfeeding, so the amount of calories that I have to eat every day to support that, you just constantly feel hungry, tired. You're so happy, but it's just like it's a whirlwind. It's just this fogginess. Like I explain it sometimes like a really bad hangover that doesn't go away till she turns 21. I don't know. But yeah. So yeah, the work-life balance has been tricky. I said to myself when I fell pregnant, when I'm a mum, I want to be a really good present mum. I don't want to be prioritizing work over her. And I worked really hard for the last 5 years to do this and not work as much and be really present in her childhood. So
love that.
Yeah.
Has there been something that's really surprised you most about this journey so far?
What surprised me was I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it is. Social media is a funny place where it can either go two ways. You can see this glamorized lifestyle of what motherhood looks like, and people are just sharing, the highlight reel of
all
their
the good
babies.
things. Yeah.
And then the other side of that is the deep, dark postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety. So there's like two worlds, which I was very familiar with. And I've had some friends who have experienced postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety. So I was aware of what that could look like. And actually myself, I definitely have experienced postnatal health anxiety with Andy. So she had a few different health issues, which I won't go into just for her privacy. But early on, she had a few different health issues, and it was so overwhelming for Zach and I.
Yeah.
And I found myself just getting so anxious, being like, what if she gets sick, or what's that little rash look like, or what is that? Is she unwell? And just that constant protecting her, especially in July when she was born, which was flu season. If anyone was sick or had been sick, I was like, stay away. I definitely had those fears. And even now, I still just poke my head in the cot. Yep, she's breathing. You just want to protect them at all costs.
And make sure it's the thing. It's like the only thing you really want is for them to be healthy and safe.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, I'm not glamorizing it. Like, I definitely have had postnatal health anxiety with her. It's a lot. Yeah. And with you being sort of a health professional, did you have to change any of your dietary? Yeah, so that was one of Andy's things. So when she was 4 weeks old, she got really bad colic, which is essentially just like crying for periods of more than 3 hours at a time, screaming in pain.
Wow.
She was super bloated, screaming. She had like mucus in her stool, which my dietitian brain immediate was like bloating, upset stomach, mucus in the stool. I was like, that's allergy. Yeah. So we actually found out that she has cow's protein milk allergy and a soy allergy. So I had to do a total elimination diet at 4 weeks postpartum, which was insane. I found it really hard, even being a dietitian, doing it, reading labels. Like, I've never really read labels in my life. Well, kind of. We can talk more about that. But, so I had to do the elimination diet to figure that out. Yeah, so she had eczema all over her body. We had to go to ED because I was like, what is this? Is this meningococcal? She had fevers. And, that was part of where the health anxiety came from, I guess. So I've been dairy and soy-free now for 5 months, I think.
Yeah.
And the changes that has made, no bloating, everything's gotten so much better with her. So
yeah, nice.
But I can't imagine if I wasn't a dietitian and knew that. Like, I don't know how that would have got picked up. So I actually went to the doctor and was like, this is happening. And I was like, I think it's this. And she was like, yep, I think it's that too. So
oh, wow.
I've been so grateful that I've been a dietitian throughout my trying to conceive process, pregnancy and postpartum, because the need for nutrients and having a good diet is so important in this stage of life.
And you also, what's something that stood out for me is also the need for education around this too.
Yeah.
It's the knowledge around, yes, you're a dietitian, but also it's so good for people to also educate themselves on these sorts of things as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any tips for new mums or women that are pregnant right now that you can?
Yeah, so if you're pregnant right now, I would say honestly just enjoy the process, really enjoy that time with you and your partner or your family before your new baby comes. Nutritionally wise, I think pregnancy is the most important time to be eating well, because what you're eating during your pregnancy influences your child's future more than you know. So it influences their taste buds and their food acceptance for when they start eating, so they can actually taste the flavors through your amniotic fluid. So if you're eating a diet that's, abundant in lots of different flavors, spices, foods, they're more likely to have a better relationship with food in the long run. So eating really healthy then. There's a lot of different dietary requirements that increase when you're pregnant. So, for example, your iron goes up a lot because of all the extra blood volume. So women need to make sure that they're eating iron-rich foods, your B vitamins as well, fiber, choline, which is one that isn't often spoken about. It is more now. So that's mostly found in eggs. So I always encourage women to eat eggs during pregnancy. It's also found in other animal foods as well. But it's really important for baby's brain development as well, which obviously influences everything from their motor skills, just learning, everything like that. So yeah, pregnancy is a really, really important time to be thinking about making better health choices.
Yep. If you want to, can you take me back to a pivotal moment in your childhood that led you to want to become a dietitian?
Yeah, so when I think like taking it back, my early childhood, I always had a really active, healthy lifestyle. We grew up on the Sunshine Coast doing, you know, all the sports, dancing, swimming, surf life saving, rugby, which is actually where we met, girls rugby.
I was a rugby coach.
Yeah, there we go. And yeah, always just kind of, you know, food for me was fuel at this point. Like it was just, I didn't really think much of food in the way that I think of food now. It was just, you know, I ate because I was hungry. When I graduated high school, when I was about 19, randomly out of the blue, I got really bad hormonal acne and weight gain and lost my period. My period was just so irregular. And I was like, what is going on? Went to the doctor. This is 19-year-old Tess. The doctor I saw at the time had the worst bedside manner, was like, you have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, or PCOS, people call it interchangeably, which is essentially a poly, meaning lots of cysts on your ovaries, which can influence your hormones, weight gain, and fertility. Well, she basically said to me, you've got PCOS, you'll have a really hard time trying to fall pregnant, and if you do, you'll likely miscarry. And this was me at 19.
Brutal.
Yeah, and I was with Zach at the time, who's my partner of 12 years. And I just remember getting in the car, just bawling my eyes out, being like, what is this? And at the time I wasn't studying nutrition. So as you do at 19, I went down a Google rabbit hole. What can I eat to get my weight back to where it was? What can I eat to fix my acne? And went down this rabbit hole and just started to remove all these food groups from my diet, because someone would say gluten is inflammatory, dairy is inflammatory, don't eat this, don't eat that. And I was so overwhelmed. Started to remove food groups, and I was like, my mum was like, what are you doing? And I was like, not sure. So she's got a science background. So she was like, you're spending 90% of your time, free time, researching nutrition. Why don't you go study it if you love it that much? And at the time I was studying multimedia. So I made the transfer over to a dietetics degree. I originally wanted to be a naturopath, but like my mum was like more evidence-based, so I kind of like took her advice for that. So went down the dietetics route and became a dietitian. So that was kind of what led me into this field, I guess. And that has been a really big driving force for me for how I practice now with my clients and patients, because I reflect back on 19-year-old me. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was getting really incorrect, conflicting information from social media and, you know, Dr. Google, and was actually setting myself up for failure in the long term, because I was removing food groups that were healthy, that I needed, that I actually needed nutrients for that PCOS. And PCOS, I should mention, is actually, there's no cure for it. It's a lifestyle modification for the management of it. Anyway, so fast forward now, I'm 30, so this was 19. Over the last, how many years is that, Elliott? Baby rain. 10 years or so. I've just made so many changes, which has really helped with my health. And then before conception, so like 3 years before Andy was born, I went and got scans and got all the tests done. And the doctor was like, you don't have PCOS anymore. And I was like, hell yes. So
it's not curable, but you don't have it.
Yeah. So that's when I say it's not curable, I'm saying that, but I'm also saying I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
So how you diagnose PCOS is there's different criteria. So one of them is high androgens, which are high male sex hormones. Women have male sex hormones, but they're generally higher. So higher androgens. You can have acne, something called, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, heritism, which is where you'll typically get hair maybe on your chest, on your face as a female. Men would typically have it.
Yep.
You can have irregular periods and polycystic ovaries. So you can have cysts on your ovaries but not have PCOS. So it's kind of one of those ones where it's like, essentially you need to have 3 out of, I think it's the 5 criteria. So I had regular cycles. I didn't have cysts on my ovaries anymore. I didn't have acne, and my hormones were within range. So I don't have it anymore, and I fell pregnant naturally.
Do you think that's because of the health route you went down in that sort of 11 years, 10 years of just looking after your body, educating yourself, putting good stuff into your body?
Yeah.
And then now you're...
Yeah, I definitely reckon. And when I work with clients who have PCOS now, we don't really... We talk about the diet a little bit, which is a bit ironic considering I'm a dietitian, but I'm talking to them more about their lifestyle. So I'm asking them, who do you live with? What's your weekends look like? How often are you drinking? How well are you sleeping? What's your exercise regime look like? What's your mental health look like? Because it's all of those little things in your lifestyle that are going to influence your food choices and your relationship with food anyway. So yeah, I think it's definitely a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle disease, which a lot of chronic diseases are lifestyle diseases as well.
My next question was, do you have a personal ethos or anything like that? And I think you just sort of...
Yeah, kind of, I probably summarized it there, but my ethos is eat all the foods in moderation. I guess that's probably the best way to summarize it. But I try and encourage people to eat healthy and make healthy choices. But if you want to have some chocolate, ice cream, a bag of chips, do it and enjoy it. But make sure that predominantly your diet is full of nutrient-dense foods.
Yeah. And how do you approach helping individuals create personalized, sustainable nutrition plans? Is it, like you mentioned before, like you look at everything in that person's life, but also that person's different to the next person.
Yeah.
So everything's individualized to that person.
Yeah, for sure. So when so just for background, I see my private clients through my online telehealth clinic. So that is like a Zoom chat face to face. And then I'll also see my patients who are in a hospital. So there's kind of two different areas that I work in. So my private clients, in the first consult, it's like a 45-minute consultation. In that, I'm asking them all about, age, gender, family history, medical concerns, social history. That might be like, who do you live with? Who does the shopping, cooking? What's your budget like? All of these like lifestyle factors that I mentioned earlier. I'll look at their biochemistry, which is their blood work. So generally I get them to get a blood test from their GP before seeing me so I can, investigate what that looks like. And then we talk about, I do a bit of a screening as well, especially for female clients that I work with in terms of what their cycle looks like. Also, if they've had any past disordered eating habits, eating disorders, what their relationship with food's like, what their beliefs and attitudes towards foods are, because the way that you were brought up, Elliott, is completely different to how I was brought up around food. Between every single person has a different attitude towards what health and nutrition looks like for them. So it's really quite in-depth, and it annoys me sometimes when people think that a dietitian is just telling someone what to eat. I'm not telling you really what to eat. It's not really the primary focus of what I do. It's creating long-term sustainable habits for my clients. With that said, I also do talk about the diet and then give them recommendations to how they can eat to best support their health goals, nutrition goals, medical concerns that they have. I'll typically do my clients a meal plan or a meal guide, so they get information or like a plan to leave the session and go follow this for a few weeks, and then we check back in a few weeks and see how things are going. But yeah, I'm mostly just trying to teach people how to have a healthy relationship with food and maintain that for the rest of their life.
And what are some key or common areas that people can have a negative impact on their well-being in terms of like the eating habits or the foods that they're having? Is it the snacking? I've heard snacking is not good, like junk food, alcohol, processed food, sugars. Is it all those things that you sort of see? Yeah,
so there's lots of different, what I would call barriers to someone having a healthy relationship with food. Some of them might actually surprise you. So firstly, sometimes people see me wanting to lose weight or have a nutrition goal, they're removing food groups. So I spoke about this a little bit before. When you're removing a food group, it can be more detrimental because you're removing foods that have nutrients that you need overall to sustain a healthy human body. So for example, dairy, that's where you would typically get the most calcium. So if you're removing dairy, that's fine. Lots of people follow a dairy-free diet, but you need to be making sure that you're getting enough calcium from other food sources, which if you're not a nutritionist or a dietitian, that's actually quite hard to do. So removing food groups is one. not eating enough calories is actually a huge one that I see. People want to lose weight, so they eat less. But actually that's setting themselves up for failure, because when you're not eating enough calories, your body wants to keep you at something called homeostasis, which is, you at a healthy equilibrium where you're trying to, your body's pumping blood around your body. You're trying to protect all of your organs. When you're not eating enough, your body will tell you, hey, you need to eat now and you need to get energy the fastest way, and that's typically from carbs or sugar. So not eating enough, you're going to get those crazy sugar cravings, carbs. Your body's trying to keep you alive. It's trying to protect your organs. So I see a lot of people not eat enough. So they start a diet, and then those cravings kick in and they fall into the cravings, and then they get the feelings of low self-esteem. I've failed the diet.
The shame and the guilt.
The guilt. Then they typically binge eat and just go, well, I've ruined the diet. I may as well just keep eating all of these foods. And then they think, oh, okay, Monday's coming. I'm going to, reset. Diet starts Monday. And then it's just this really negative, vicious cycle of what I call like yo-yo dieting, where you're just constantly removing food groups and not eating enough calories. So that's another one that I see a lot as well. Then the opposite to that is obviously overeating and not understanding what the correct portions are for you. So you and I, Elliott, would have completely different portion sizes from like your mum, your sister, your dad, your uncle, your brother. Everyone's needs are so different depending on your lifestyle and genetics and all of that as well. So not understanding portions. Liquid calories, which is a huge one that people generally forget about.
Explain.
So liquid calories is any type of drink that has calories in it. So your coffee order, what does your coffee order look like? Are you going through Zarrafas and getting a creme brulee that's got upwards of 30 grams of sugar in it for breakfast, and you're having your morning coffee? Is it the cocktails and the alcohol that you're drinking on the weekend? Is it the energy drinks that you're having? Sports drinks like Gatorades, Powerades, which are, everything has its time and its place. Juices as well. Smoothies, which are fantastic. Don't get me wrong, love juices and smoothies, but they can be made, I'm not going to say incorrectly, but they can sabotage kind of nutrition goals. Icebreakers, all of those liquid calories that can really add up as well. Yeah, so there are some of the barriers that would be the main ones. Also, fad diets, which maybe we'll talk about.
We will.
I've got very strong opinions on that.
Do you?
Yeah. But yeah, just following diets that are just unattainable, not sustainable, and just set people up for failure.
Yeah.
So,
and what I really love about the work you're doing is that I can tell you put so much time and energy into not only educating people, but empowering people to make informed choices about their overall well-being.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the nutrition and how that impacts mental health and your gut health?
Yeah, so this is a topic that I'm actually really passionate about. And let me just preface this by saying that take what I say with a grain of salt. So I'm not here saying that if you eat like this, it's going to cure your depression and anxiety, because if nutrition could cure depression and anxiety, we wouldn't have the rates of depression and anxiety that we do. But what I'm saying that maybe making healthier choices with your diet can promote better well-being long term. So there's a lot of really great research coming out in the field of nutrition psychiatry, and a lot of the connection between our gut health and our brain health. So the first one that I would say that is so important is dietary fiber. So dietary fiber is found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, beans, lentils, and legumes. The reason why dietary fiber is so important for our gut health is because when we digest fiber, so fiber's, I'll just explain what fiber is. It's the part of plant foods that is undigestible to the body, or it's actually a carbohydrate. So when we eat fiber, our gut bugs actually have to break down the dietary fiber, and they break it down into something called metabolites, or they're called short chain fatty acids. We're getting a bit sciencey here, but I'll try and keep it cool.
We've got a science audience.
Yeah, there we go. So, it breaks down these fibers into short chain fatty acids, these metabolites. And what these metabolites do is they actually influence so many factors of our health. So they influence our immune system. They think about 70% of our immune cells are actually found in our gut, and that's what's influencing the way that we respond to viruses and illnesses. So our immune system, which is huge. They also influence our metabolism, so the way in which that we like maintain a healthy body weight or, put on weight. They also influence our hormones as well as a range of other factors in our body, which is so important. So if there's anything that anyone takes home from this podcast today, it is really work on increasing your dietary fiber, because the research on dietary fiber is so amazing. It's also important to make sure that you're eating a diversity of fiber in your diet. So think about your typical shopping. So if you go to the supermarket, what fruits and vegetables are your go-to? So for me, I always have my bananas, my apples, my broccoli, spinach, kale, all of that. I strongly encourage anyone to pick a fruit or a vegetable that they don't normally eat and add that to your trolley. So what we want is a really diverse microbiome. We want a lot of different gut bugs in there.
Okay.
We don't just want the ones that you would get from broccoli.
The same stuff all the time.
We want a diverse gut microbiome.
Yeah.
So the more diversity, the better your body and gut health will be long term. So try and encourage, you've probably heard the saying, eat the rainbow. 100% eat the rainbow. Get a mix of different colors in there as much as you can. So fiber is huge. And then in the gut, we've also got our gut-brain axis, which is the vagus nerve. So that's in your gut, and it's sending chemical signals to your brain. So if we've got a good, healthy, strong gut, that's going to really have positive impacts on our mental health. There's a lot of other different foods that we can eat to promote good mental health. So another huge one is dietary fat, and there's a few different types of dietary fat. So we've got our good fats. So they would be our omega-3 fatty acids, which are typically found in oily fish. So salmon, tuna, and other types of seafoods. You can also get smaller amounts in things like chia seeds and flax seeds, but that would lead us into our next group, which would be our poly unsaturated fats and mono unsaturated fats, which would be olive oils, avocados, all of our nuts and seeds as well, things like tahini, peanuts. They're fantastic. And the reason that I recommend these fats is because what these fats do is they're anti-inflammatory. So some mental health conditions are inflammatory. So we want to be counteracting that with eating anti-inflammatory foods. So these kind of help target something called free radicals, which when you've got inflammation in your body, you produce free radicals, and these healthy fats kind of go in and help counteract them and improve them. So as well as healthy fats, they're also really good for stabilizing blood sugar levels, promoting, lowering cholesterol, which is really important if you've got family history of cardiovascular disease or stroke. So they're very protective in a lot of different ways. You'll find fiber and fats that I've spoken about are core pillars of what we call the Mediterranean diet. I'm not pro any type of diet or anything like that. Everyone's individualized, but the Mediterranean diet is the most, in my opinion, intensively studied type of diet. It's got fantastic research on it being protective for lots of chronic diseases, including mental health. So it's huge in the mental health space.
What is the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, good question, Elliott. So it is a diet that predominantly focuses on plant-based foods. So all of the fiber that I just spoke about. Yeah. You still have protein in there, so a lot of focus on fish as well, eggs, red meat, but in smaller amounts because red meat can be inflammatory when eaten in excess. It still includes dairy, but in smaller amounts as well. It actually has a focus on red wine because of the polyphenols in red wine.
Very, very Mediterranean.
Yeah, very essentially, and a strong focus on olives and olive oil as well. The diet recommends to reduce processed foods and ultra processed foods. So there's a difference between processed and ultra processed foods. And then it also has a strong focus on the well-being component of eating. So socializing when you're eating, the rates of depression actually decrease when you're eating with family and friends because it's that wholesome social acceptance as well.
That connection, isn't it?
Yeah, that connection. So
I was on the Mediterranean diet for about 2 weeks and I never felt better.
There we go. Yeah, it's fantastic.
When I was over there.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. When you're in Europe. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I love that. I was red wine every night.
Yeah, it's great.
It is. How does stress play a role in your gut health?
Yeah, so I think...
I mean, that's sort of lifestyle factors as well that you've sort of touched on.
I think when we think about stress, I'm sure most of the listeners could identify when you feel nervous for something or when you have that anxiety, you get, butterflies in your gut. Like your gut, do never forget, like always let gut feelings guide you. So a lot of the work that I do in IBS and IBD, a lot of that can be triggered from stress as well. So that is for people who have issues with diarrhea, constipation, bloating, cramping after meals. So they will, there we go.
I've got a story for you.
Yeah. They will typically get an IBS flare up in an experience of stress. So that is all of that. So your mental health, that vagus nerve from your brain to your gut, they are talking to each other every single day, sending those chemical signals there. So
is there an optimal time to be eating? I know like when I was playing footy and trying to put on weight, it was like every 3 hours. Eat before I go to sleep, wake up at 3 a.m, eat.
Yeah.
Every 3 hours eat. I just knew that was putting so much harm on my gut. Even though I was young, I was just like doing it to put on weight. Looking back on it, I go, no wonder I started to have gut issues.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of, not a set rule, but is there a sort of guidelines you give your clients with optimal times to be eating?
So for your instance, it sounded like were you trying to put on muscle or put on weight for football? Yeah,
because I was doing so much exercise and running and so much fitness that not only did I have to keep the weight on, I had to also put on 2 or 3 kilos over the off season of muscle.
Yeah. So that's really tricky because that's, a bit different to the standard general advice I would give. So yes, you would need to be eating ideally in a calorie surplus, which is to gain weight or muscle, eating more consistently to get the gains essentially. Yeah. So yes. And if you're going to bed after a large meal and you're not, moving around, walking, exercising, that food's just kind of sitting there in your gut and it's probably going to make you feel quite bloated, uncomfortable. Yeah. Also, if you're having a really high intake of protein, that can cause a range of different gastrointestinal symptoms from bloating, gas. I've worked with a lot of men who are trying to put on body weight, smashing whey protein. Tess, why am I so gassy? I'm like, there's a lot of protein that you're having,
Yeah, I was smashing it too.
Yeah. I typically say, for me, what works best in my experience as a dietitian is people who stack their calories more at the start of the day. So it's so cliche, but breakfast is the most important meal of the day, in my opinion, for the reasons of preventing overeating, binge eating, overindulging later in the day. You're typically more active throughout the course of the day too. So if you're having more of your calories to support that at the start of the day, that's probably better than having a large dinner. Where I find a lot of my clients and patients struggle with are those who do shift work. So nurses really struggle maintaining a healthy body weight because of the sleep deprivation, because sleep is so important for your weight and your mental health, and they're eating at all random times of the day. So that's tricky. Or truck drivers or miners. There we go. So
I'm going on night shift on Saturday.
So that's really tricky to navigate, and it is really...
Because I've been told that to try keep your body sort of normal is you eat at the normal times that you would even if it's on day shift.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Is that what you would say?
Yeah.
So I find it extremely tricky when 10 o'clock at night's not too bad. I can sort of eat a normal meal I would at 10 in the morning at 10 o'clock at night. But it's at 3 o'clock, we sort of smoko times.
Yeah.
At 3 in the morning, but I would normally have a 3 in the afternoon meal. I can't have 3 in the afternoon. I would have, a bit of potato and some chicken and some rice or whatever it is. At 3 in the morning, I can't eat anything.
Yeah.
I feel like a yogurt and a bit of fruit, and that's it. And then I think I'm not hungry when I go to bed at 6 in the morning, and then I sort of don't eat until like midday. So I'm kind of like, I'm missing like a whole chunk there, and then I feel sort of a bit sluggish when I wake up, and then I'm like, is it because it's night shift? Is it having enough food? And it'll honestly take me maybe 2 or 3 days in that week shift where I sort of get my balance right again. And by the end of the week, I actually at the start that I
that is
really struggle
tricky.
with.
What I would say overall is if your day starts at 7 a.m. and it finishes at 7 p.m., or it starts at 7 p.m. and it finishes at 7 a.m., if you're eating the total amount of calories that you need for your body, weight, size, lifestyle, it's not overall, I don't think it's going to do much damage if you're eating at different times, so long as you're getting the right amount of macronutrients and calories you still need within your window. So your window looks different every day, but if you're still making sure that you're getting your targets, then you should be fine. When it can become an issue is if you're relying on foods to give you energy at those 2 a.m., 1 a.m., etc., and the foods that you're eating are the not so healthy foods. So that's when it can kind of set you up for failure.
I've found that when I have a meal that I would have during the day and I have it on night shift, I get really tired.
Yeah.
Really tired. And I'm like, all right, I know I can't have that meal at 3 a.m. because I know when I finish it, finish my lunch or my time at 3:30, I will be so tired. So I can't have like a normal meal because, when you have a nice belly full of food, you're just like, oh, I just want to like
nap now.
But I can't nap. I've got to go out and work for the next 3 hours and 3 a.m. So I'm like, okay, I can't have that. I've got to have something light that's not going to like fill me up too much. That's kind of keep me awake a little bit. And then when I sort of knock off work at 6 a.m, I can go have I'll try have like a sort of a decent sized meal.
Yeah.
But then I've been told that like having a big meal before bed's not the greatest either.
Yeah. So what would you typically eat?
For breakfast? Oh, so when I knock off work in the morning.
Or that one when you like that.
3 a.m.
Yeah.
So 3 a.m, I would have like honestly some fruit, banana and apple. I would try to get some yogurt or some muesli or something.
Yeah.
And that would honestly be it.
That's what I would say. I would say in that time, focus on protein and carbohydrates there and maybe some healthy fats too to help keep you satiated but not super full.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wouldn't be telling you like, Elliott, go have a massive like curry.
I used to. Yeah. I used to have a big curry at like 2 a.m.
Okay.
And then I'd like go back into my machinery and I just put my head back and I'm like, oh, I could go to sleep now. I'm so tired.
Yeah. Think of it what you would eat like post-workout. So I always tell people post-workout, get the protein for your muscles, keeping you full, and then the carbs to replenish the lost glycogen stores from your muscles too. So focus on like a protein and a carb there. Some other good options would be like protein snacks. Like, I don't know, you probably can't do this in the mines, but boiled eggs. You can do boiled eggs. Yeah. Even just like, can you do like tuna?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like stuff like that. Like snacks that are high in protein and fat would be really important. Yeah. And then carbs, great fruit. If you're into like whole grain carbs, like whole grain bread, fantastic. Whole grain crackers. Yeah.
Do you have any myths to bust when it comes to nutrition or eating? Is there many? Is there a lot of misconceptions when it comes to?
We ain't gonna need to do another podcast on this episode. Nah.
Give me 10.
There's a lot of myths. Okay, like some common ones that I see on social media, like lemon water to start your day.
I've heard that.
I come from a family of dentists, so all my uncles are dentists. My granddad was a dentist. It just strips the enamel off your teeth for one. It's really bad. It's not going to increase your metabolism. It's not going to help you lose weight. What it's going to do is hydrate you. Fantastic, drink water in the morning.
Yeah.
You might get a little bit of vitamin C, antioxidants from the lemon.
But that's it.
But it's not really.
What about the cucumber in the water?
Probably the same. Really. That's just refreshing, I would say. Like for people who struggle to drink water, absolutely add some mint in there, add some cucumber. If anything that's going to encourage you to drink more water, fantastic. That's a big one. The whole like don't eat after 6. Have you heard that one?
No.
It's like don't eat after 6 p.m. because you'll gain weight. Not really correct. You can definitely eat after 6. There's a lot of conflicting info about what foods are good and bad for you. So there's like don't eat gluten is a huge one. Don't eat dairy. Carnivore diet is so big at the moment. There's people just typically eating meat, which brings it back to our mental health topic, like fiber. You need that fiber. So
I love meat.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine having a carnivore diet.
Yeah. I've worked with clients who've come off the carnivore diet. Then when they start to eat fruits and vegetables again, they basically get IBS because their body is like, what is this fiber? You don't have those, your gut microbiome is not used to it and it's got to learn how to redigest everything again. So don't get me wrong. I have I'm not against anyone who follows any different types of patterns of eating. You do you. You do what works for you. But if we look at the evidence and the long-term health implications of some of these diets, I'd be worried in like 10 to 15 years of the long-term implications of removing really – like I thought when we think of nutrition, I thought that most of the population knows that vegetables are good for us. Not in the keto world, not in the carnivore world, paleo world. They decrease some of vegetables too. Like I thought that was one thing that we could all collectively agree on in the world. No,
can't do it.
Can't do it. There's some guy on Instagram, I don't even know his name. He's in America. He was like holding a bag of spinach saying like, spinach is so bad for you because of the oxalates in spinach.
I heard something that the vegetables are trying to kill us. Have you seen that one?
Oh my God. Yes.
The broccoli is trying to kill you.
Yes. Oh my God.
Never eat it.
Broccoli is like one of the best foods to reduce cancer risk.
I wonder if they're referring to the pesticides and all the chemicals that help grow these vegetables.
That's a whole different topic. And I agree that I think that the food industry has so many flaws. There is so many issues in the food industry. Do not get me wrong. Our soil is different to what it used to be. We have a high demand for food in the supermarket shelves. It has to look a certain way, be a certain texture. Last year, actually, before I fell pregnant, I went up to an avocado farm tour in far north Queensland. If an avocado falls off the tree, they can't use it.
So Jordan, my fiance, used to work at a fruit store up in Budrum.
Yeah.
And she said we would throw out so much food because the banana had a little mark on it. Can't use it.
It's ridiculous.
They would just chuck out so much fruit that had any little blemish on it that they just said, oh no, it's ugly.
It makes me so sad. We actually have a food insecurity issue in Australia. So a lot of families in Australia are going to bed hungry. So that's our elderly population. Our kids are going to bed hungry. The cost of living is ridiculous. Like, what used to cost $100 at the supermarket now costs you $200, $300.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to that pesticides, we have the food industry. It's like so much bigger than you and I here. Like, I get a lot of backlash being a dietitian. People, I get trolls saying like, your degree was funded by the food industry, the dairy industry. I was like, no, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't. But yeah, we have a long way to go with our food industry, but it's bigger than all of us. There is so much money in the food industry. It's like $1 trillion industry. Not to mention like the environmental impact that it costs for farming. And that's not just saying cattle and animal foods, also fruit and vegetable. The amount of water that we use to grow this produce is ridiculous. And if people want to eat organic, fantastic. If you can eat organic, that's great. If you can afford to feed your family all organic, go for it. If you can't, don't worry. If you can't and you are concerned about the pesticides on it, rinse it in water, vinegar and bicarb if you can. Try and get as much of the residue off as you can. Foods that are in skins like bananas, mangoes, avocados, less likely to have impact than say like berries, like foods that obviously don't have a skin that
Apples,
you're not eating.
Yeah.
So maybe wash those a bit. I work with people from all different walks of life, Elliott. Like I'll work with a truck driver who's lived in the country who eats cereal, McDonald's, KFC, processed foods, frozen foods. He might think that that's healthy. He doesn't understand that that's not healthy. On the contrary, I might work with like a high profile influencer who, makes $500,000 a year, wants to eat organic, shop at the farmer's market, do Pilates, has a sauna, has an ice bath. She wants a meal plan. Am I going to give her a meal plan that's got frozen pizzas, KFC, Macca's? Absolutely not. So I might give her an organic diet. But then if I work with old mate from the country and he wants to eat healthier because his toe's falling off because he's got diabetes, we're going to just start small. I might say, okay, let's get some frozen veggies out there because that's, your supermarket might be like 300 Ks away and you can't access it as easy as someone who lives in the city. I have very strong opinions about not a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's what we call health literacy. So that person might not understand that that's unhealthy for them. So it's really tricky. So,
and there's a term I've heard you use, and it's nutrition privilege.
Yes,
is that what?
That's what it is.
That's what you're talking about there, and you don't want to recommend something to, say, the truck driver out west that's going to deter him from
absolutely.
You don't want to go straight for that whole change, because he's just going to be like, well, this isn't going to
it's not sustainable for him. If he eats McDonald's 5 times a day and I say have salmon, quinoa, kale, broccoli, have a chia pod in the morning, have a smoothie, have a green juice, he's going to open that plant and be like, she's kidding herself. She's absolutely kidding herself.
I don't even have a blender.
Exactly. I'm not that person that has this is the best diet to eat, because it looks different for everybody.
Mm. And it's the thing you touched on before is it's the cost of living too. I think a lot of families are we can't afford to be going all organic.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go the cheapest option. And most often the cheapest option isn't the good stuff. But sometimes we don't have a choice either.
Yeah. It really pisses me off. Sorry, I probably shouldn't use that kind of language, but it really grinds my gears.
So we say fucking shit.
Okay, cool, because I do swear. Let's just put that on the table. But it really does annoy me that it might be cheaper for your family to have what are those things called? McDonald's family meal.
Happy Meals and stuff. Yeah.
It might be cheaper for that than it is to feed your child smashed avocado on whole grain bread with a side of salmon. Mm. Salmon is expensive. Avocados are expensive. The healthiest foods that I recommend, like nuts and seeds, are really expensive. They're really nutrient dense foods, but they are expensive, as opposed to a loaf of white bread, which might be, I don't know, how much is white bread these days? $3.50.
How good's white bread?
Oh, it's delicious. But you know what I mean? If you're picking the healthier option, that's actually more expensive.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's why I have issues with the food industry, because it's such a big gap.
And they make it harder for you, don't they? It's just I think a Happy Meal is $3. I talked to my mate at work in the mines. He's like, Happy Meal is $3.
Yeah.
Kid gets fed.
Yeah.
It will cost me $20 to make a meal it's
the gap.
Gonna feed him. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the food, so I work in the hospital as well. Some hospitals that I've worked in, the food is absolutely atrocious. I wouldn't eat it. My dog probably would look at it and be like, what is that? And
my dog gets good food.
Yeah. Lenny eats better than I do, honestly. No, that's a joke. But I cop so much backlash, and dietitians collectively cop backlash because of the food that's served in hospitals. We get some influence over what that looks like in the hospital. At the end of the day, it comes down to budget. It comes down to funding.
Exactly,
in our health department. One hospital I was working at in my rotation, the food was made out of prison because of the budget. That's what I mean. It's a big industry. And
it's same with the mining. Our mining contractors for the food out there changed last year. And I was like, oh, why did it change? And he goes, these new contracts, they were cheaper than the last ones. So that's why the mines hired them. And I was like, cheaper than the last ones? What's the food going to be like now? And then all of it's frozen. All of it's frozen. They come in and you can taste the difference straight away. The water's different. The food's different. And then we go out to work and they preach, good nutrition, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, where's the good nutrition?
Yeah.
I'm struggling to find it, because you'll keep choosing the cheapest option possible.
Yeah.
It's just, I get dumbfounded by their attitudes out there. And I'm like, well, there's no winning. I don't feel out there.
It's hard. Mines are very similar to, I guess, hospitals and then prisons, sometimes even schools. I feel like we kind of, school tuck shops and canteens are a bit more regulated in Australia than they are in, say, America. But there's huge issues there. And a lot of it, at the end of the day, comes down to funding. Which is really sad. But when you think about mining, so you're obviously working in a rural, remote community, access to food, fresh fruit, produce is a lot harder when you live in a, what are we called? The city. Say brain again. So yes, you do need to have frozen foods. You mentioned frozen foods earlier. Frozen vegetables actually don't contain less nutrients than fresh vegetables. In fact, sometimes they actually hold more nutrients because they're snap frozen. So when you think about a carrot getting picked and then it's got to make its way all the way to the supermarket, we're losing a bit of nutrients sometimes in oxidation of gases of fruits and vegetables. So if you're actually snap freezing it, there's no issue. I have no issues with that.
Oh, cool.
Same with berries or frozen fruit, which is good.
Yeah.
Where it becomes an issue is if it's like a tinned fruit where they're adding syrups and sugars and salt to preserve that food.
Oh, okay.
Same with pre-cooked meals. So for a shelf life. So I worked at U Foods, which was one of my roles before I was a dietitian. We had to have preservatives and we had to have salt in those foods to prevent foodborne illness, to prevent food from spoiling. When we think about it, 50, 60 years back in war and things like that, if we didn't have food processing, so canned vegetables and things like that, we would have all been starved. Little bits are okay, but if you're eating foods that are heavily processed every single day, high in salt, preservatives, all of that, yes, it's probably going to have a negative impact on your health overall. But yeah, it's hard though, because it's like, well, if we can't have frozen foods, then the miners don't eat.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's really tricky. But
now, you mentioned earlier about gut microbiome.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this story before, but halfway through this year, I went and got a microbiome test done. Mm-hmm. And I've probably struggled knowingly. I knew that I've had gut issues for a while, and I started to feel really, really sluggish. And in the mornings, I would just be like, I think I've got baby brain in the mornings and stuff. And I would have like heartburn and indigestion, and then like constipation, and it'd be hard going to the toilet. And I was like, nah, there's something like, and I left it for like, when it got to that point, I left it for like a year, and I was like, oh, this is actually not good at all. Yeah, I went and got a microbiome test done, and the results I had, I should show the results to you. Actually, I got them on my phone.
Yeah.
I had parasites, fungi. I had, I think she said I had little bits of leaky gut.
Oh yeah.
IBS, like all my good bacteria turned bad. And it's funny that you mentioned that stress and things that go on in your life impact your gut health. And I won't go into too much detail, but during that time in my life, there was sort of some drama going on with my family, and I thought I was handling it well emotionally and mentally, but I honestly think it reared its head at that exact point.
Yeah.
Where I was sort of going through a lot of stress at home. Yeah. And it all came to like a one point. I didn't realize that my gut was holding a lot of that trauma, I guess, or emotional stress.
Yeah.
And then I did a cleanse. I had a lot of inflammation. So I knew that sort of dairy and gluten weren't doing me any good. Yeah. So I got rid of gluten and dairy, did a cleanse for 4 weeks, herbal medicine, felt amazing. Mm-hmm. Really felt good. I was like, oh, I was filthy too because I love dairy, and I was but she said you don't have to have no dairy. It's just like, just limit less of. And same with like gluten and stuff. It's like, don't cut it out. Just like, how much were you having it? And I was like, every day. Yeah. Twice a day. Yeah. So now I feel really, really good. And something that I've mentioned to you before is that I come from like a competitive background where when someone tells me this is the right course, and then I see positive change, and then I'm like, all right, cool, it is the right course. I started to, in terms of my food, I started to develop a bad relationship with my food. Yeah. In terms of like, when I was feeling so good, I cut all these sort of, I guess, bad foods out. And then when the cleanse finished, I was like, oh, wouldn't mind a bit of pasta. Yeah. Or I wouldn't mind like a milkshake or something. And then in my head, I'm like, no, Elliott, that's not good for you. That's bad. And I started to like feel, when I do have it, I've started to feel really like guilty and a bit of shame. Like, you're not meant to be doing this. And it would make me feel like I'm a bad person for having these foods that I was told that's sort of not good for your gut health. And I know that's sort of something that you specialize in, is developing a good relationship with food. Can you tell me exactly what I was experiencing? Yeah, so there's a bit to unpack in that. So firstly, elimination diets, which is what you did, have a time and a place, and I'm not against them if they're done under the supervision of a qualified practitioner, so a naturopath, nutritionist, dietitian. Absolutely. They can be dangerous if you try and self-do an elimination diet. So if your gut was inflamed, I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but if your gut was inflamed, yes, gluten or dairy could be adding to that inflammation, but it doesn't mean that they're inflammatory overall. So yeah, she gave me like a list. Yeah. She gave me like an anti-inflammatory diet, and she gave me a list of like what I can have and what to stay away from. Yeah. She was like, as best she can, try and like stick to it. And like the list of things I could have was massive.
Yeah.
But the list of things I could have when you've spoken about it were things I've never heard of. I was like, what the hell are all these things? Yeah. And so that was like the tricky bit, was like getting out of my old routine and was like, I can't have what I normally would have, and then go to the supermarket and be like, oh, how do I incorporate this into a dish? Like, how do I make this into a meal?
Yeah. So it is tricky, and I don't particularly work in, like, naturopaths practice a little bit differently to dietitians. We would do like a FODMAP diet. I'm not sure if you've heard about that, but yes, I was saying eat fiber, blah, blah, blah. But if you do have IBS or IBD, certain fibers in foods might be inflammatory for you because your body is having a hard time at digesting some of those fibers. So, essentially what you did was an elimination diet. I get a lot of clients and patients who have done elimination diets or cleanses, and then they finish the cleanse, they start to reintroduce foods again, and your body is like, what is this food? Your enzymes aren't used to breaking down that food, so then you have a hard time readjusting to that. So even me being dairy free for my baby at the moment, when I start to eat dairy, I'm terrified for what that day looks like if I've done some, made myself become intolerant to it. So that's one thing that's happening internally for you. The next thing that it can also do is really negatively impact your relationship with food. So there's a term called orthorexia, which is actually a type of disordered eating, an eating disorder. It's on the spectrum of disordered eating. I'm not saying that you had this.
It felt like I was in the car and I go, this must be a little bit what it feels like to have an eating disorder, because I knew it wasn't healthy. Yeah. And I was like, this must be what people like, on a very small scale, what their mindset is when they eat food. Because I've never felt like that before. I've always been someone who the metabolism, it would always be, I'll just burn food off. But I never really thought about food as bad or good in another way. And until this, and then I've realized, well, that food was actually, or the way that I was eating was actually harmful for me. And then I seen myself how good I feel. And then I didn't want to go back to that, even though like, I love ice cream.
So it's really tricky. So this is why I have a really hard time with people who promote cleanses and detoxes, because the long-term implications of that, how that looks like for that client that you've recommended that long-term, is really quite challenging. So when I first became a dietitian and started practicing, there was this diet called the HCG diet, which I won't go too much in detail. Essentially, it's you only eat 500 calories. You take these homeopathic drops that are meant to suppress your appetite. So all these people lose weight. They lose weight really fast because you're essentially starving yourself. Then when you start to include more foods again into your diet, a lot of the clients that I was working with had developed severe eating disorders because of this. So because they lost weight eating these foods and this amount of calories, they think then that they can't eat those foods, or they can't eat more than those calories because then they'll gain weight. It's like that saying of, Elliott, don't touch that light. All you want to do is touch that light. Or if I say, Elliott, you're not allowed to have your favorite food, which I don't know, what's your favorite food?
I like a big dirty burger.
If I said you're never allowed to eat a burger again, all you want to do is eat that burger. Like when I found out I had dairy intolerance, I didn't eat a whole lot of dairy. My baby did. I didn't eat a whole lot of dairy, but all I wanted to do was eat cheese.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're not allowed. It's like the forbidden fruit. So you want to eat it. So it causes a really negative relationship with food long term. And I really, eating disorders or disordered eating doesn't discriminate between gender in terms of males and females. Probably the stats are higher for women, but I work with so many women who have disordered eating habits, behaviors, because of the main reason when I screen is I say, when did this first begin for you? It's like, when I was trying to lose weight for a festival, or when I was playing footy trying to gain weight, or when I was
getting that summer bod.
Bod, or when I was going on getting married, going to Europe, and I wanted to lose weight, because they started restricting foods, they started restricting calories and things like that, and just not under the guidance of medical supervision can be really dangerous long term. So
how do you help them through that?
So when I work with that client one-on-one, we'll do a lot of screening and unpacking. It's kind of like unpacking your life. What led you to this?
It's a little bit of therapy, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. And dietitians are trained through nutrition counseling, which is a bit of like motivational interviewing, trying to get clients to feel safe and supported to share. Like, my clients cry in a session. Like, at least, maybe 60% of my clients will cry, because food is so much more than just food. It is an emotional response. Like, celebratory. Funerals, there's food. Weddings, there's foods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has that strong connection to memory as well.
Exactly.
Like your favorite food, like either the last food you had with your mum before her passed, or like your birthday food, or your, each food you have has that emotional connection. And then if you get told like, you shouldn't have that as much as you should, it's just like, well, that's a memory for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I remember the night before my grandma died, she had a dinner bread roll and soup, and was like dunking that dinner bread roll in that soup. And every time I think of that soup and bread now, I think of my grandma, or she used to bake the best scones ever.
Yeah.
My family, whenever we get together, we make scones in honor of her. So food is so much more than that. So bringing it back to what we were talking about, we start to unpack that. For my clients who have active eating disorders or disordered eating, I strongly encourage them to also work with a psychologist as well, or a counselor, because the clients who I work with who are working with a psychologist and a dietitian, we have better outcomes long term. But it's not a overnight fix. It's a lot of support, ongoing care, and just building them back up to where they were. Like if I get an email or a text message from a client, because some of my clients text me because I kind of roll like that. But a client before Christmas messaged me saying, "Hey Tess, I went out for lunch with my friends and I ordered this on the menu and I ate it and I went home and I didn't feel guilty." That for me is best. Like, I'm retiring now. If I can teach my clients to make food choices, not feel guilty, and just enjoy their life with food, like my job is done. At the end of the day, that is so rewarding for me. Like a lot of girls who I've worked with have really a lot of food anxiety, food fears, just like you mentioned when you were on your cleanse afterwards, you would get those feelings and thoughts. For people who have active eating disorders, it doesn't stop all night, all day. It is about their next meal, how much they've eaten, what their body looks like, constant body checking, constant comparison. It is a really, really dark, sad, stressful period for people who are in an active disordered eating, and they don't get the help that they need, which is really sad.
And what I found was like if I ate something after the cleanse, I was like, all right, if I just go, to get a bit of junk food or something. Yeah. In my head, I'm like, all right, well now you've got to go to the gym the next day. Yeah. And you've got to work all that off. So when I'm at the gym, I'm like, I'm not gymming, I'm not exercising in like a positive sort of manner. I'm kind of like, well, you deserve this because you ate that thing yesterday. And I'm like, I got to get out of this. Like, like you said, it's all in moderation as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Some people can, like, there's other disordered eating habits which are like exercising to burn off calories, which is not a good relationship with exercise either. So I always say to people, move your body in a way that feels good for your body, not because of what you've eaten.
And something that I've really learned, and when I did the microbiome test and I did the cleanse, and I'm really in tune with my gut now. And when I eat something, I'm like, before I just wasn't that in tune. So if I eat something that was, sort of upsetting my stomach, I just wouldn't notice it. Now when I eat something and I sort of feel my gut, I'm like, oh, okay, like that's probably not.
That's really good. That's intuitive eating, what I call.
And now I also use that when I in terms of hunger and fullness. So I used to eat when I wake up just because I think that's when I should eat, not because I'm hungry, but I'm like, oh, I've woken up, I should have a big brekkie.
Yeah, like out of habit.
Out of habit or boredom, or like this is my routine. I would just eat because this is when I normally eat. Yeah. But now I eat when I'm hungry.
Yeah, that's great.
And then when I get full, instead of like, I used to like push myself because this is a habit of like trying to eat as much as I can, trying to put on weight. And then now I'm just like, I love getting to a point where I'm like, oh, I'm not full, but I'm good right now. Yeah. And then I don't really sort of eat for the rest of the day. Yeah. Or sleep the next morning. So I think that's really important for me, is like eating when I'm hungry.
Yeah, that's amazing that you can do that. So that's called intuitive eating and mindful eating practices. So for some people who it takes a while to get to that point, but that's fantastic. I always say, like, listen to your body. Like if I give a client a meal plan, I always say, if you're still hungry after that meal, please eat. You don't have to just eat that, because every day your metabolic requirements change. So it depends on how much you sat that day, what your hormones are doing. Well, women, where you are in your cycle, how much you've exercised that day. Did you do the washing? Did you do the laundry? Because that's incidental exercise as well. Our bodies aren't robots. They aren't computers. They don't, input, output, exactly, spreadsheet, exactly. It would be great if it could be like that, but every day looks so different for one person.
Thoughts on fasting? I have dabbled in it.
Yeah.
I still do. Not on purpose, like what I said to you just before is like I'll eat when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
That will almost turn into a fast because I will say I'll have my last meal at night at like 6 or 7 and then I'll wake up in the morning. I haven't eaten anything today and it's, 11:30.
Yeah.
And my last meal was at 7 last night and I'll just eat when I'm hungry. That sort of turns into a fast.
Yeah.
Almost turns into
accidental fast.
Fast. What's your view on fasting? I've heard so many good things and
it depends on what you're doing it for. So if it's for weight loss, fasting works because it's creating a calorie deficit. So any time a client wants to lose weight, we just have to create a calorie deficit. That's why a lot of fad diets work because at the end of the day, they're creating a calorie deficit. So it doesn't matter what it looks like. If you're eating less of calories, you will lose weight. Like, period. That's how it works. Yeah. So if it's for weight loss, fasting can definitely work because of that. If it's for other reasons in terms of like energy or
like recovery,
sleep, recovery,
produces growth hormones or something like that.
I feel like there needs to be a lot more intensive research on those like little pillars, which would work. For a lot of women, I don't generally recommend it because of our hormones. So especially depending on where we are in our cycle. For people who have a history of disordered eating, absolutely no way in hell because it's that restrictive, you're not allowed to eat food in this window. And then if they do it, it sends them into that cycle that we spoke about earlier. I hate saying this, but it is very individualized. Like if it works for you, you don't get ridiculous cravings. You don't feel guilty if you've eaten food. If you feel good, by all means, definitely do it. If you're someone who's doing it for weight loss and you're getting those really like that internal dialogue saying like, I'm so hungry, I really want to eat. Oh, it's not 12 o'clock yet, I can't eat. That's when that's probably not right for you. Yeah. For people who have like a background of endocrine issues like diabetes, PCOS, metabolic issues, probably wouldn't recommend it because of your blood sugar levels. Let's just talk about blood sugar levels really quickly. So when I recommend people, I generally say across the board, try and aim for like 3 main meals, 2 or 3 snacks. That's really good at keeping your blood sugar levels stable throughout the day. So think of a line for the listeners. We want a nice linear line. When we eat a meal, our blood sugar levels go up because we're getting that influx of sugar or glucose. When we don't eat a meal, they drop. So when they drop low, that's when we get that fogginess, that fatigue, that like hangry, if you've ever experienced that, that dizziness, that fatigue.
Jordan's experienced it from my end.
I experience it every day. But so we want to for some people that drop in those blood sugar levels can be quite detrimental because then that's when you get those crazy binge eating cues. So I always say generally keep it nice and linear across the day by having regular consistent meals across the day, which is good. So it's time and place, but I think there's better ways to promote healthy eating than fasting for general people. With that said, when I work in the hospital, I fast because I see 10 or 12 patients in a day. I don't have time.
It's accidental fasting.
It's accidental fasting. And then I get to the end of the day and I'm delirious. And I'm like, why do I feel like shit? Haven't eaten anything nutritious or drunk water.
Yeah. What is one last message or piece of advice you could give our listeners that could have a bad relationship with food or see, I guess, food as good or bad?
Yeah.
How could you help them?
I think try and attach no rules around food is a good one. So all food has a place, good or bad. It can all fit into a healthy, balanced diet overall. If you want to have that chocolate, that cake, by all means do it, but just focus on eating mostly healthy foods across the day. If listening to this episode today, because we did speak about mental health and disordered eating, if that's triggered something in you, I would definitely encourage you to get the support that you need in terms of working with a dietitian or a nutritionist or a psychologist and getting that help, because you don't need to live like that every day. Like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can eat food and just eat the food and that's it. You don't think about the food in the way that it consumes you.
Yeah.
So definitely get the support you need. Obviously try and make healthier choices overall, because long term you know, a lot of the chronic diseases that we have, like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all of that, they are lifestyle diseases. So if we're decreasing alcohol consumption, decreasing smoking, eating more fruits and vegetables, we're setting ourselves up for decreased risk of developing those diseases. So just think about, like, while your listeners are probably like maybe 20s to 30s, is that your age bracket?
We've got a couple of oldies
in there. Yeah. So anyone listening,
Yeah.
what you do now is so important for your long-term health.
And that's a really good point you made, because I've spoken about this before. Is for the first time I've put my health number one.
Yeah.
I never used to do that in my 20s at all, and I've gone to my 30s, and now I'm realizing the things I can do today is going to help me, 20 or 30 years down the track. And you mentioned at the start is that, yes, nutrition is such an important thing, but it's also one of many things that you need to do to help your mental health. And the three of the big things that I've done or taken really seriously is my sleep. Mm-hmm. So I've sort of broken a few, I guess, social stereotypes when it comes to sleeping with your partner. Mm-hmm. Jordan's a massive heavy sleeper. So we've had a fire alarm go off at the house and she hasn't woken up to it.
No way. Jealous.
Yeah. And she can fall asleep on a dime. Like she goes to bed at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and she'll sleep all the way through till 6 in the morning.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm a massive light sleeper.
Yeah.
She has a little bit of allergies. She has allergy shots. If it's during that season or needed to get a shot, she'll be coughing and sneezing.
Yeah.
And we slept in the same bed for about 4 years, and I was just getting horrible sleeps.
Yeah.
And I was just battling through it because I thought this is like what couples do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll get a good sleep, and that might sort of outweigh one of the bad sleeps. And then we just moved into a new place, and we've got 3 spare bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I was like to her, can we just trial sleeping in separate beds just to see how I'd go? Because I used to have the best sleeps before you.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah. I feel like Zach would say the same. I try and cuddle him. He's like, get off me.
Yeah. And I was like, let's just trial it. And she was like, yeah, sweet. So we had like our first sleeping in separate bedrooms, and I had one of the best sleeps I've ever had in my entire life. And now we'll sort of work it when she's going through a season where she's got allergies, or if I've just come off night shift, come back to the coast and I need to get a good sort of unbroken sleep.
Yeah.
She's got a little spare bedroom that she's made her own now, and now she's I try to go in there sometimes. She kicks me out of it. This is my space. So I think that's a big thing. And I sort of talked to other people about like their sleeping cycles, and they were so surprised that was an option for them. And I just thought like, why would both of us go through something that's not working for the both of us just because there's a societal pressure that this is how a relationship should be or act or something like that. So that's one big thing that we've been sleeping in the same bed for the last couple of months now. She got an allergy shot, so she's a good. In winter she gets a bit cold and she wants a snuggle. But the next one was exercise. So I've always been pretty active, but I think doing exercise, like I talked to you about before, was when I was playing footy, I was just doing the exercises to perform in rugby and not necessarily enjoy them.
Yeah.
And I remember when I stopped playing footy, I was like, I'm going to actually do the things that I will love to do, because if I love to do it, I'll keep going back to it. So I've got back into swimming. I've done a bit of boxing, a bit of HIIT training. The workouts are a lot different just to do the 1 rep max that you used to do in sort of rugby and try to get away from running as much as I can. And then, the third thing was my nutrition. I think after I did that microbiome test, I really realized and was in tune with my gut and how I was feeling and how was it affecting my mental health and even like stress in my life that I think I could just take mentally. Now I know that stress can really impact your gut health and how I manage that and the foods that I eat. So that's for the audience.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like when I work with a client, it's like, it's not just what you're eating, it's all of those other things like movement. Sleep quality is massive. Like there's so many studies on sleep in terms of decreasing lifespan for those who sleep less. They live less. Your body, your mental health, weight, everything. Like sleep is so crucial. Sometimes people are like, oh, I feel so guilty. I missed a session at the gym. I slept in. I'm like, sleep. Sometimes sleeping is better than going and doing a session.
Absolutely.
Because you're recovering in that, 8 hours that you've slept for the night. So, you really hit the nail on the head there. Other things too, I think are really important, like meditation, yoga, like taking care of your mental health if you're into that, as well as social supports as well. It's huge. Like having connection with people is really, really good. Making sure that your social circle supports your goals as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're hanging out with people every weekend who are drinking, getting on drugs, it's just not helping you get to where you need to be. You can make new friends.
Before is like when you eat good food, you want to exercise, you don't want to get on the drink, and then you drink more water, and then it's like that cycle habit of like small healthy habits will just create a good routine.
Yeah, 100%. And just start small. You don't need to do it all in one day or 1 week. Just slowly increase your habits for long-term success.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And taking the time. Your expertise and insights on nutrition and healthy eating were incredibly valuable. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.
A little surprise for you.
Oh, dear.
I don't think you're aware, but we have a closing tradition on the podcast.
You know what? I've got a confession.
What?
Haven't listened to some of your episodes.
That's okay.
Because when you started releasing them, I was pregnant and I was full of hormones, and because it's mental health, I was like, Elliott,
too much.
This is triggering. Like I caught up with my girlfriend Abby, who you're friends with.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my goodness, did you listen to this episode? So sad, but so good.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Can't do it,
Abby. Give me 6 months and I'll be back on. So I actually don't know what your tradition is.
Yeah. So I have a closing tradition where I don't ask the last question.
Mm-hmm.
I get a loved one, whether it be a family member, friends, they send in questions for the guest.
Oh dear.
Oh yes.
Who is it?
All right. So I would get them to send in like a voice recording so I can play it to you. But Abby.
Oh dear.
She said, I got stage fright about recording. I hate my voice.
Abby! I'm going to have words with you.
So she wants me to read this out to you. She says, Tess, my darling, you're such a strong, resilient woman. I'm so proud of all the things you've achieved in the last decade or so. Our high school years were tough for you. Your parents' divorce had a huge impact on you, and I know you've done and are still doing a lot of work to heal from those past traumas. How has your upbringing influenced the way you approach being in a long-term relationship now and motherhood? Is there anything you try particularly to do or not to do that you've learnt from your own experiences within your family?
Oh my God, it's so cute. And she's trying to make me cry on this episode. Actually, it's probably better sending that in a text message.
Than hearing a voice.
If she sent that in a voice message, I would have cried. Okay, so I think definitely my parents' divorce has completely changed and shaped who I am as a person. While it was like the hardest thing that my family ever went through, I don't think I would be who I am today if it wasn't for that. And like the success that I've had with my business probably wouldn't have happened. So taking that into my relationship with Zach now, I feel like, you know what, you actually need to get Zach on your podcast because he's got some stories to tell. I'll tell you that.
Does he?
But he doesn't like talking, so that would be hard. But anyway, so Zach is the most gentle, kind, nurturing person you'll ever meet. I don't know anyone who doesn't get along with Zach. And we've been together since I was 18, so I think it's 12 years now. What I always say is it works because we are really good communicators. Zach isn't as big of a talker as I am, but I've done a lot of therapy. I actually still work with a psychologist. I have actively for the last 3 years monthly. And that's been amazing for me to unpack a lot of things that happened in my childhood that influence my life now. So one thing that's always stood out to me is like communicate. If I'm not happy with something or we're having issues or whatever that looks like, we need to talk about it, because I think a lot of that is what made my parents get divorced. Is they had issues but they weren't talking about it, and then one day, boom, it was over. So if you're having little issues and hurdles, you need to talk about it so that your needs can be met, and just being really empathetic with people and understanding like, why do you think like that? Why do you behave like that? Because that is so important, I think, so that you can really empathize. And like, because you know, everyone's situation is so different, and I can't resonate with that because I haven't been through what you've been through. So if you can communicate why you do the way that you do, like for example, last night, Andy, our baby, was crying and Zach was trying to settle her because I did a fake tan and I obviously couldn't hold her, which I said, I did a fake tan anyways, which Abby will give me shit for. But I was like getting so agitated, and like when my baby cries, it's like this biological response in my body where I literally am just like, oh my goodness, I need to cuddle her and like love her and cuddle her so she stops crying. And Zach was trying his goddamn hardest to like try and settle her. And I was like, walked into the room, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Like, what have you done? What's happening? And he just looked at me and he was just like, oh my God, I'm just trying to settle her. Yeah. And then afterwards, once I'd calmed down and she had stopped crying, I was like, I'm really sorry that I yelled at you. What's going on for me internally is that like I literally just feel numb in my whole body when she's crying. So I'm really sorry that I snapped at you. I'll try not to do it again. And his response was like, yeah, it makes me feel really shit when you yell like that because I feel incompetent as a parent. And
as
I'm
a
like,
dad,
yeah. And I'm like, you're not incompetent at all. Like you're the most amazing dad. This is just like postpartum hormones rage that is happening. Whereas the opposite to that is I couldn't have apologized and he could have just internalized that he was like this shit dad, incompetent at settling his baby. And I could have just continued to just snap and yell, and that build up, give it 5 years, we separate because we just resent each other and hate each other. So communication is like so important, I think. Yeah. And then on that as well is like work with a psychologist. I feel like 99% of people could benefit from working with a psychologist. Like,
absolutely.
I'm pro see a psychologist.
Even if you think you've got nothing going on.
You got shit going on.
You got shit going on. Go to a psychologist. You'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so important for me to like 3 years ago, I had a massive change in my life. Like I changed so many things in my life, from my friendship group, the alcohol. Like I haven't had alcohol now in 16 months, I think. Obviously was pregnant, but stopped drinking when I was thinking about trying to conceive, and the impact that has had on me is so amazing.
Like how? So
why was I drinking? I actually am someone who I don't really like the taste of alcohol. So I'm not someone who, I crave a beer. I just I wasn't someone who would get home from work and be like, I really want like a glass of wine or something like that. I used to drink to get drunk. I used to drink because my business was stressful. Like I was just like, I need a relief.
An escape or something. Yeah, yeah.
Or I would drink in a social setting because all my friends were drinking.
To fit in.
And it was just like what was normal. Like we've grown up on the Sunshine Coast and just drinking is just so normal. It's part of our lifestyle. Whereas because I work in the health world too, the amount that people drink is actually not normal. Like it's just what we've done, like high school, post high school, all of that. So I was drinking for that reason too. Or, I was just drinking for whatever reason. Then when I was pregnant, obviously trying to conceive, I recommend stopping drinking for at least 3 to 6 months if you can, to improve sperm and egg quality. So I kind of stopped drinking then. And then pregnancy, when you go out with your friends who are all drinking and drunk, I'm like, God, you're annoying. Or God, like what's going on here? Or you just see
Shut
things.
Up.
No, yeah, that sounds horrible. So any of my friends listening, I love you, but
you're annoying on the piss.
Just stop drinking and figure out what's going on in your head. No, but I just started to see things in such a different light, and now postpartum, I'm just like, and I'm not saying that I'll never drink again. I'm not saying that I'm anti-alcohol. I used to love margaritas, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But it's just not the time and the place that I'm at in my life now. And I look back and feel sorry for myself. I was like, what were you doing? Why were you drinking every weekend? I wasn't happy. I have so much more happiness now in the little things, like going for a sunrise swim, going for a walk, going to the markets on a Sunday morning, not having a hangover. I just feel so good.
Yeah, your values and everything, your priorities have changed.
Everything has changed. My whole life has changed.
I feel the same thing. If I wake up Sunday morning fresh, I'm like, have a smoothie.
Yeah.
go down to the beach, walk the dog. I'm like, this is the best Sunday
Yeah.
morning ever. How the hell did I ever go through 10 years of hangover Sundays and pretty much wasting the whole day?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So like, I like changed so many aspects of my life, and I suffered with burnout so badly before I fell pregnant, to the point where I was like in my psychology office, not office, sorry, we do telehealth, but she was just like, you need to stop. So I actually my business grew really quickly, really fast, and I just said yes, yes, yes to everything.
Yeah.
Took on way too many contracts, and then I found myself just being like, I worked so hard for this, got everything I wanted in terms of the contracts that I had, the financial goals, and I was so unhappy.
Really?
I just was like, I hate this. I don't want to be a dietitian anymore. It was too much. I had like 7 different contracts going on. Was working like 70-hour work weeks and just complete burnout. And it got to the point where I was like, not passionate, don't want to see that client, don't want to do this. Yep. So I actually ended a lot of those contracts and was like, it's just not, I need to cut back.
You had to learn to say no to a few
say
things.
no.
Yeah.
And then I was like to Zach, or Zach and I had the conversation where I was like, yep, let's try for a baby. And then, So now I've definitely learned to like take on less, just really enjoy like a slower pace of living. Like I was chasing the dream.
Yeah,
I was like, I want this, I want this, I want this house, I want this. And now I'm just like, I just want to be with my baby, you know?
Living in the moment a bit more. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, yeah.
We've got a few more.
Oh, God.
Okay, I'll play. This is Jamie.
My sister.
Younger sister.
Yeah.
Younger sister.
If you could go back in time 10 years, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, that's a good one.
Good. Almost a little touched on it there a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah, I think I would definitely say work out who you are and don't just do things because everybody else is doing it. I've been pretty good at like my business is called Authentic Spoon. So being an authentic person is really a strong core value of mine. So I know on this podcast it's more of like a professional setting, but I'm actually like the biggest bogan, biggest weirdo, like take the piss, like I'm crazy. And I've always,
we're not professional.
Yeah. I've always kind of like nurtured that side of my personality as well. But yeah, I just think 10 years, just like, oh God, it even just makes me emotional thinking about it. Like just do you, don't do what everyone else is doing. In terms of like body image and stuff like that, man, in high school, like, and you go, I feel like I can speak for a lot of women here. Body image is a huge thing. Like just learning, I wish I could have the self-acceptance of body image that I do now than when I was in those early years, and just like don't compare yourself to people. Everyone's on their own journey. And I would have worn more sunscreen.
More sunscreen.
So I don't have as many wrinkles. No. But yeah, sun safety is paramount.
It's paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that about the sort of that body image thing and stuff is what do you think changed?
I think once I like adapted a bit of a healthier relationship with food, that changed for me a lot too. And yeah, just understood food in a different way in terms of like food. You don't just eat food to be skinny or like have abs or whatever. I eat food now to support my health and goals and stuff like that. Also, like strangely enough, like postpartum. So when I was pregnant, this is like personal information. When I was pregnant, I gained maybe, I think it was like 11 kilos overall. And genetically, or the way that I've eaten, whatever, when I was 2 weeks postpartum, I was back at my pre-baby weight within like 2 weeks. And I was just like,
wow,
what the heck just happened? My body is different though. My boobs are bigger. My hips are bigger. I'm not as toned as I used to be, even though I might be the same number on the scales. And I actually like love my body so much more now, which like 18-year-old me would have just been like, what the heck? My abs are gone, whatever, like those stupid things that you do. But I'm like, my body just literally grew a human being. I grew a skull. I grew teeth, you know? And like,
it's that empowering feeling, isn't it? Yeah.
And I just feel like more like womanly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I've got like a little bit more curve now and stuff like that. And I love my body so much at the moment. And I feel like that's really hard for a lot of people to say, like girls especially, saying, I love my body, I love the way I look, without people saying, oh, you're arrogant or like you're up yourself or whatever. if you can love yourself, oh my goodness, that is so amazing, because that influences the way that you love other people then too. So yeah, just, you know, a lot of girls, even my friends are goddamn drop dead gorgeous, and they pick apart themselves every day. Like literally like, oh, why don't I look like this? Or why don't I look like that? And I was just like, come work with me and let's unpack some stuff that's going on.
I think that was one of the most important questions that I got asked in therapy was do you love yourself?
Yeah.
And you don't really think about it too often, do you? It's like anything about yourself, it's like that arrogance or tall poppy syndrome or something that you just don't think that like, oh, I love myself, I love who I am, I'm great. Yeah. And you sort of, if you say it out loud, you sort of get labeled something or you get a bit of negative talk. But I think that's something that therapist made me really think about, was like, how do I view myself and do I love who I am? Yeah. And then obviously like that, the ripple effect, it goes out to your family and friends, and how do you interact with people, and the whole body image thing too. So yeah, it's so important. I think there's a difference between confidence and arrogance as well. So you can be a confident person, but you can also be arrogant, and they're two completely different things as well. Yeah. So all right, next question. Zoe, older sister.
Oh.
Although you've had a challenging start to parenthood, what has been the best part so far?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but just like the little things, like watching her smile, or just like watching her develop, and watching Zach become a dad is so amazing. And then watching myself become a mum and change as well. Oh my God, I could get teary talking about this. I was like, I'm not going to cry. We're just talking about nutrition. Just like the little things, like there's this Danish word called, I'm going to say it wrong, hygge, I think it is. And it just means like wholesome, not having to be anywhere, just like family picnics, like down by the beach. That is just like what I think like motherhood and parenthood life is like, just like the small moments. Like you don't need to drive this amazing car, have this big beautiful house, earn this amount of money. It's just like those like really small moments, because money can buy anything, but it can't buy happiness, and it can't buy love. So I think that just those like really small moments with my family is
those
the best.
Small moments, so you just sit there and think like, I love my life.
Yep, for sure.
Awesome. Yep. Ellie, one of your other really good friends, but this is a voice message.
Hey, Tessie. As you and I have just become brand new mums, and you for the first time, I wanted to know, how has your mental health been since becoming a first-time mum, and have you handled it better than you thought that you would, or has it been a bit more of a struggle than you originally anticipated? And also, did you take any steps to kind of proactively navigate your mental health wellness before having a baby in preparation for the postpartum phase?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And God, Ellie's voice sounds good. Like,
doesn't it?
Husky voice. I'm like, are you sick? Or like, you sound good, girl. Okay, so very important question, and like sensitive question, obviously. So I think I mentioned earlier, before we started to conceive, I was working with a psychologist for like 3 years, trying to like unpack stuff from my childhood, because I thought that when I became a mum, I like didn't want to bring that stuff in there. So that's something that I was proactively doing. So I have a history of depression and anxiety that I first developed like even before my parents were divorced, when I was like doing competitive surf lifesaving. I just used to get to the line and just like walk away because I'd get performance anxiety. So I'd kind of always was like type A high achiever, perfectionist, which is like the worst freaking thing ever, because you're your own worst enemy. So being aware of that, I was like really paranoid that I was going to get postnatal depression. And I've had friends who have experienced that and kind of knew what that looked like. So I was really aware of it. And even when I fell pregnant, my midwife, like they do a screening of your mental health, and she's like, so you've got a history of depression, anxiety, like that can come up in pregnancy and all that. So I think just being aware of the triggers for things that trigger my mental health, it was a really big one. And then becoming a mum, oh my goodness, like no one prepares you for the hormones. Like I remember like day 5, I think it was, when my milk came in. Zach actually has a video of me. Maybe we can maybe we can show this, I don't know, on social media. But I'm literally, he's in the kitchen and he's just like filming me as he does, like holding my new 5-day-old baby. I'm watching TV and like Lenny's sitting there and he's like, oh, it's a cute moment. I just start crying for no reason. Like the hormones are so intense that like no one can prepare you for what that feels like. They call it like the baby blues.
Yeah.
Sometimes they stick around for a lot longer. So I actually like felt really, really good. I was so happy. I was like, this is amazing. And then when Andy's health issues started to happen, oh my goodness, the health anxiety that happened was so intense. Like I was so scared of just like, I think I mentioned, well, I don't know if we were talking about this off the record, but I was so scared of like flu season, people not washing their hands with the newborn, people kissing babies. I was like, do not kiss my child because of like RSV and like the cold sore virus, which is really dangerous for babies. And it's really hard because I have that background in the health world. So I'm aware of all of these like risks that can happen for newborn babies, but a lot of like family and friends don't kind of get that. And the way that our parents were raised with like the way that you bring up children now is very different
Very different.
Oh my God. Some of the boomer opinions I've had is just like next level.
My dad was just like, we'll just let anyone like hold the baby and like put your finger in the baby's mouth to give it like an immune system, build up the immune system and stuff.
I think like COVID has changed a lot of that for a lot of people too. Like people are a bit more aware. But so when Andy got sick, like 4 weeks with like the rash and all of her intolerances, and I probably won't go into too much detail for her privacy, but there was a few other things that happened. Yeah. I was like first time mum, full of hormones, navigating this first time mum experience and just being so scared of anything bad happening to her was such an intense feeling. How I look at it is like that anxiety that you feel to protect your child is actually, you need to look at it in a good way because it's actually helping you to protect your baby. And also the way that the brain works, I think, in my opinion, is that I've already thought about every bad thing that could happen to her.
Every possible outcome.
Every possible bad thing.
Yeah.
So that if it happens, I've kind of already like stepped myself into what that looks like and how I respond to that. But the intrusive thoughts are next level. And like I pray that no one ever has to experience some of the intrusive thoughts that you get. Like so she's just started rolling and now she sleeps on her stomach, and like SIDS-safe guidelines say like babies should be put to sleep on their back. I will literally wake up in the night. Like, so Andy's a great sleeper. She sleeps through the night. I wake up in the night and check her because if I don't and she's on her face, she's not breathing and then she dies. Like they are so intense.
Really?
Like the health anxiety is a huge one, I think.
Do you have trouble like relaxing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have trouble relaxing
in general. Yeah, okay.
Like my mum used to come over early postpartum days and just be like, just go lay down. Don't go on your phone. Just lay down. Like to get me to just not do anything is like a really big challenge for me. Like I'm always someone who's like on the go. So that was a really, really hard thing, like slowing down.
Is that something you're working with the psychologist?
Yeah,
so
I've been a bit naughty. I actually haven't seen her in a while, but she's just had a baby, so she's on mat leave. But yeah. So I probably need to see her or see someone again for it. But just the health anxiety was a huge one for me because I think once you've seen your baby sick and then like some health issues that you have, your mind just spirals, hey? Like you are just like, oh my God, what if this? What if I don't do this? What if this happens? So I wonder if I would have actually had postnatal health anxiety if she didn't get sick. I do wonder.
Yeah. One more question. Who do you reckon it's from?
Oh, did you get Zach on there?
I did.
He talk?
Yeah, bloody oath he did.
Okay, 2-part question. What is the best advice you can give me to navigate through all the fad diets we see on the internet these days? And part 2, can we get pizza for dinner tonight?
What a smart ass.
Okay, 2-part.
Get out of it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Fad diets, to summarize, I think, is this diet something that you could go out to dinner with friends and eat or sustain? Could you eat that diet when you were pregnant, trying to conceive, or could you eat that diet for 6 to 12 months? Chances are, if it's a fad diet, your response will be no. So like going out to dinner, you'd feel those feelings of like guilt, shame, deprivation, you failed the diet. So if it's a diet that allows room for treats, then it's not a fad diet. So that's one big thing. If it's a fad diet, so if you're pregnant, chances are it's probably restrictive. So your body needs all those nutrients to grow a baby, which is a big one. If it's got like strict, rigid rules around timings of foods, when you can eat, types of foods, if the diet comes with a bunch of supplements and vitamins and minerals that you need, it's probably just you getting upsold from someone who's trying to make a quick buck from you. So the healthiest diets, generally you don't need supplements unless you're deficient, in my opinion. Yep. And can we get pizza tonight? Yes, you can get pizza tonight. And I'm pretty sure he made pizzas last night.
Do you buy pizza or do you make your own?
We mostly make our own.
Yeah,
we make healthier versions of pizza and like a pita bread with lots of veggies on there.
I think he might be referring to Domino's, I think.
Yeah. So, like, if you go to Domino's, I feel like personally there's way better pizza options, like Good Slice and Maroochydore,
Yeah,
delicious. Verona,
Yeah.
Bianca in Brisbane, Boca.
There's a new Italian place in Maroochydore near Giddigisha. I can't remember what it's called. They do amazing margarita pizzas.
Like, my go-to meal would be a margarita pizza.
Oh, would it?
I love margarita pizza.
Yeah.
So I'm pro eat whatever you want.
Yeah. We did a week in Italy and all it was margarita pizzas
so
and a pasta, and it was delicious.
Oh, how good.
Yeah.
Got to get over there.
But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thank you.
You provide us so much education and knowledge for the audience, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really good that we're talking about this and get the message out there. And, people, if you're confused about nutrition, just work with someone, because you can improve. Like, anyone could benefit from seeing a psychologist or a dietitian, I think, long term. Like, things you're doing in your diet, you might not even know that they might be unhelpful for you. So, yeah. And thanks for having me on.
That's all right.
It's my first public speaking thing in like 12 months.
Is
so
it?
Baby brain. Small steps. Getting back in there. Getting back in the horse.
Nice. Thanks, Tess. Appreciate it.
Thank you.